Some influential Catholic Church leaders are attacking the American media for what they're calling Stalinist and Nazi tactics against the Catholic Church in its coverage of the child sex scandal. We'll debate whether that's a fair accusation in our next half hour. A reminder, too, that the chat room is rocking tonight, and you can join in right now at chat.msnbc.com. First, let's get back to our discussion of the situation in the Middle East in the context of the meetings between President Bush and Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. We are talking about what the prospects are now for moving this discussion forward, particularly in the face of the fact that the Bush administration appears now to be taking a pretty tough line against the possibility of negotiations in a context of ongoing violence. Joining us, Hussein Ibish of the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, and still with us, Raanan Gissin, the senior advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. Both of you, welcome to Making Sense.
Thank you.
Delighted.
Now, I'd like to start, Hussein, with you.
Thank you.
Both in terms of what you have just heard from Raanan Gissin and the overall situation that is faced right now. It seems to me that what I'm listening to is somebody who's saying, look, if we can just stop this killing, we can get on with a discussion. There are certain things that we will not give up, but everything else is negotiable. Why, on that basis, couldn't progress be made from here?
Well, the problem is on twofold. First of all, what Mr. Gissin is saying, and the most important thing he's saying, is that Israel will not end the occupation. He said that absolutely categorically just now. He said they will not withdraw from occupied East Jerusalem, which they are required to do under international law, particularly UN Security Council Resolution 476, which the United States voted for, which spoke of the urgent need to end Israeli occupation of Arab lands, including Jerusalem. That was passed in 1980. And he said also that Israel refuses to negotiate as long as Palestinians continue to resist in any way. He even talked about incitement, meaning speech, that has to end. Now, Palestinians are being expected to negotiate under occupation. I think that there is a conflict, and as is normal in any conflict, you have to have a political process to substitute for the process of violence. This is just an excuse. This is a cop-out. The intifada, the uprising, the one we've been in, began on September 28, 2000. And Israel did not cut off the negotiations until January 2001. So this is a political decision. It's not an unthinkable thing that negotiations can go on while resistance takes place. And certainly Palestinians will have to live under the occupation until the negotiations finish. So this is just a cop-out.
Yeah, let's start from the beginning. This is not occupied territory.
Of course it is.
It's disputed. You say it's occupied because that's your definition. It has never been.
It's a dispute between you and the whole rest of the world.
There has never been a Palestinian state. It was occupied by Jordan for 19 years. Occupied Gaza was occupied by Egypt.
The UN Security Council.
No, look, I don't want to go into history. These are disputed territories.
You don't care about international law?
No.
What a liar you are, sir.
No, Arabs live in Israel as free citizens. By the way, they have greater freedom in Israel than in any other Arab country. 1.5 million of them. No one restricts their place of living. Jews have a right to live in their ancestral homeland. This has been our ancestral homeland for the past 4,000 years.
There are scores.
I know you deny.
There are scores of UN Security Council resolutions voted for by the United States.
You are the ones
including as recently as October 2000, which say that Israel is the occupying power in East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza Strip.
Let's go back to Resolution 181, which you have violated. You have never accepted the Jewish state.
I didn't violate anything.
Yes, you did. You had 7 Arab armies, not you personally, but you had 7 Arab armies, invaded the newly born state of Israel. You denied our right to exist as a state. You denied the right that Jews have rights to live.
If there is a dispute.
Answer my question. What question?
No.
Answer my question first. If you'll answer my question, then you'll understand my position.
What's your question?
Do you accept the inherent right, the birthright of Jews to live as a free, democratic Jewish state in their ancestral homeland in Palestine, what you call Palestine? Yes or no?
I don't think there's
an inherent...
let me answer. I don't think there's an inherent birthright to any state, but I do think that Israel, as it is constituted...
Why not?
Because every state has to be governed by the consent of the majority of people who live in it.
No.
There's no such thing as an abstract concept. Let me say, I am more than happy to agree that Israel, as it is now, ought to be recognized and ought to live in peace and secure and defensible borders.
No, not Israel. The right of the Jews, like the right of the Palestinians. That's
I'd
what
like
you
to
have
get
to
a word in. I'd like to get a word in.
Yes, sir.
Because I just had a very fascinating discussion at dinner with a couple of Palestinian spokesmen, and the discussion went round and round, and we got to this very point that you're raising in terms of whether or not there is acceptance of Israel's right to exist. And I think that the important question that I'd like to put to you, Hussein Ibish,
yes,
to address directly, is the issue of the Jewish character of Israel.
Yes.
Does Israel have the right to exist as a state of Jewish character, which is to say, governed by a Jewish majority?
Yes.
Is that a legitimate objective to be preserved in terms of Israel's character and future?
As long as it has a Jewish majority, of course. In the event that demographics change, migration patterns change, then I think under democratic principles and under I mean, unless you value ethno-nationalism above principles of democracy and equality, no, I don't think any state has an abstract right to exist, but I think Israel, let me clarify, I think Israel as it's constituted ought to be recognized and accepted and embraced. So
now let me ask one further question, because it seems to me that if one accepts the right of Israel to exist, then you accept the right within the accepted norms of respect for human dignity and basic rights.
Yes.
You expect the right of a state, to act in such a way as to preserve the basic principles of its existence, to govern its immigration policy and other things of that kind.
Yeah, that is for Israel to determine.
That's for them to determine.
Yes, it is.
Now,
it's for them to determine.
Does that include, when they sit down at the negotiating table, a right to include that aim in terms of what they are or are not willing to accept on issues like the right of return and so forth? Yes,
on the issue of the right of return, there, of course it is. There has to be a balance between the undeniable rights of Palestinian refugees, like all refugees, to the choice to go back to their homes or not, with the legitimate political interests of Israel you just described. I mean, of course, if you're going to recognize an Israeli state, it's going to have a legitimate interest. So there's going to have to be mechanisms and modalities for giving Palestinians their choice and recognizing the right of return in some serious fashion, while not asking Israel to do anything absolutely against its fundamental interests with regard to its own sovereignty. I think everybody understands that. No, I'm not.
When you're asking for me to withdraw to the 67 borders,
you won't end the occupation.
When you're asking for the right of return, a choice of right of return to the land of Israel, you're asking me to commit suicide.
Of course I'm not asking you to do.
That's what you're asking.
No.
You're asking me to dismantle the state of Israel. Who gave you that right?
Every single listener and viewer can understand that there are 3.7 million Palestinian refugees. I appeal to everyone, is there no distance between 3.7 million and
by all means, tell the Arab